Welcome back to Petty Astrology. I'm your host, Kaycee Felton-Lui, and I'm really excited about today's episode. It's been feeling a little heavy lately as we have Pluto at 29 degrees Capricorn approaching the very end of that sign. So if you've been feeling not so hot, just know that you're not alone. We're collectively closing out some big chapters, and we're witnessing multiple genocides, massive wealth disparities, harsh weather due to climate crisis, and growing fascism across the world. Just classic Pluto and Capricorn stuff we've been dealing with since 2008. But this is stuff that all of humanity is facing. It's not personal, it's not a punishment, but it is the result of a lot of issues that have been left to fester and decay for too long. And you don't fix things by ignoring them. That never works. So we're gonna have to face the music and decide what our personal role is gonna be in doing something about it. Now, I had to be told this because I tend to block people claiming to be astrologers because usually they don't know what they're talking about, but apparently they're out there fear-mongering about Pluto moving into Aquarius on January 20th. Now, I'm just gonna remind you that we already got a taste of the energy of Pluto in Aquarius from March 23rd to June 11th, 2023. So you may want to look back at what you were experiencing then and get an idea of some of the themes that might come up again for you personally, but just know that it's not going to be an exact repeat. Because in astrology, as in life, nothing happens quite exactly the same way twice. Aquarius is the sign that governs humanity. And at a moment where many people seem perfectly content ignoring the difficult realities we're experiencing, I think it's more important than ever that we stay in touch with what makes us human. We are not solitary individuals that are supposed to pull ourselves up by our bootstraps. And if you've ever tried to literally do that, you know that it is physically impossible to do. That's actually what that phrase means. So we live in a culture that expects us to do the impossible, to behave as if our individual actions have no impact on anyone else. That we don't need to be bothered by other people being evicted from their homes or children in the Democratic Republic of Congo who are brutalized and abused to mine the resources that power our new phones and computers and electric cars. But we know it matters. Human beings matter. You matter. When those Capricornian systems and the illusion of safety and order is crumbling around us, we have two choices. One, we can keep pretending. Focus on ourselves and the stuff we want to buy and the people we want to be seen by, and cling to the illusion that we can insulate ourselves from change that's happening on a global level. That will only work for so long, but it is a choice, and you have free will. Two, we can be honest about what isn't working, and we can take stock of our skills, abilities, relationships, and resources, and decide what practical steps we want to take to move forward individually and with others who also see that human beings deserve systems far better than what we have right now. We need to work together. And people hear that, and they're afraid. They've made us so fearful of ourselves and each other. But look at everything humanity has built. The beautiful things and the horrific terrors, the medicine that saves people's lives, the weapons that obliterate an entire population in the blink of an eye. We are powerful beings, and it's easy to focus on what's falling, what's failing, and who's taking advantage of our belief that we're too small and too isolated to ever stop them. But if we come together, if we use our different experiences and knowledge and skills to build new systems that are built on respect for each other and the land and the planet, there are millions upon millions of us around the world. And there are plenty of people who hope and pray that we never realize that we stay quiet and compliant and small and alone. So we need to do things in ways we never have before. You don't have to have all of the answers to start. But there is no superhero coming to save us. And that should be a relief. It's not about you or me. It's about us. All of us. And Pluto in Aquarius will give us the opportunity to learn that all of the inspiration and the solutions are already there waiting to be discovered. And all we have to do is come together, get organized, and make it happen. The only thing standing in our way is fear. Today on the podcast, I have a brilliant conversation with one of my mentors, psychic medium Carrie Wilson. After that, stick around for more on Pluto and Aquarius and how you can make the most of the astrology of this coming week. Well, I am so glad to have my other mentor here, Miss Medium Carrie Wilson. How's it going?
It's going good. It's going good. Freezing, but
Yeah.
good.
You were just telling me that you've been going through an interesting Saturn transit. You got Saturn moving through your first house,
Yeah.
and you've been having to kind of level up.
I was gonna say, oh, it's been fun times or whatever, but and I can't remember right in this moment what other transit was happening or if it just had it kind of came in subtle because even when I went to reading about it, and Kathy educating me on it and everything, it was like, oh, I've already been doing this. So it come in slowly kind of thing. And it wasn't, I guess in my mind I had it built up to be this explosive type energy for some reason. I have no clue why, but it's just been really subtle and it's almost like I was already working towards it, if that makes sense. Because we even looked back on like the transits kind of thing. It was like, oh, I was already doing, putting those boundaries in place and, like, hey, this is me kind of thing way before. It's been fascinating.
Yeah, there's so much fear around Saturn, and I think it's because people don't quite understand the energy, and it's usually not this hard hitting, like fast
Yeah.
energy. It's something that is over time, and Saturn does represent consequences, right? And people think consequences, and because of the way we're conditioned, it's like, oh my God, I'm going to get in trouble. And that's the way that
Yes.
we think about everything.
The ultimate punishments.
Yeah. And so everybody thinks of Saturn as a punisher.
Hmm.
And rather, it's actually the consequences of all of the hard work and training that you've been doing over the last while.
Yeah.
And you're stepping into authority, but what that looks like is going to depend on the work that you've put in and the time that you've put in up till that
Right.
point, which you've done. You've been doing mediumship for how long?
Since 2013.
So, you're seasoned.
I'm,
You're seasoned
I'm
at this point.
spicy.
You are. You're spicy as hell. You've laid this beautiful foundation for yourself, and yeah, it can be challenging to kind of step into something, especially if it feels new or if we're feeling like we're not
Mhm.
ready for it. But you've laid all this groundwork for yourself and you've been teaching and growing. And so it's a time where you can really embrace your personal authority. You can embrace your boss bitchness,
Right.
and that can be a really positive thing.
The only thing I've noticed, and I'm a huge advocate for therapy. I go to therapy. Everyone go to therapy if you can. But that's the only thing that I have noticed with this transit, and me and my therapist talk about it regularly, is I'm really fed up with people's bullshit. Like, if it threatens my peace in any kind of way, shape, or form, gone. I remove it right then because it's just not worth that ruminating in my mind or in my spirit and getting angry or upset or whatever. But I just have a really, I can't. I'm not gonna put up with the bullshit kind of thing, you know.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And you shouldn't have to. Saturn being in Pisces, you're putting boundaries around your energy, which is pretty much what you just
Yeah.
said exactly. So that makes perfect sense. With the energy that has been going on lately collectively, there's obviously much happening in the world and a lot of things that haven't been appropriately addressed socially that are kind of coming to collect right now. And it can be really overwhelming. I feel like people right now are really overwhelmed. This week in particular, with the energy, the astrology shows us that it is going to be a week of a certain amount of tension. It doesn't mean that every single person is going to have a bad week, but it means like on a collective level, we're probably going to see some stuff we wish we
Yeah.
didn't see. and it's going to involve some of us more directly than others. And so, my advice for that is to really keep your focus on what is actually in front of you, what is actually within your control, and just trying to stay as present as possible with all of that going on around us. How do you individually stay focused on what's in front of you?
Oh, that's a hard one. Which I think it is, or I feel like it is a hard one for most people, right? Because we are heavily conditioned to think of the future and be drawn forward. But what I find myself doing is, I grew up with not necessarily your typical parents or even uncles. So I heard from an early age, excuse my French, if they don't feed, finance, or fuck you, then they don't matter. So if I'm in that moment and I start to worry about something or whatever, I try to just, okay, well, there's nothing that I can do about it on a Monday night at 7:15 because I forgot to pay my water bill. So we're just going to have to. So I try to put things into place. It's also helped me through therapy because you hear people in the spiritual community talk about, and it's not a judgment thing or an asshole thing, talk about be self aware. Well, what the fuck is self awareness, right? So it's helped me to have the, I guess, the guide in place of, okay, I'm really fucking angry right now. Okay, am I really angry or am I hurt? And if I'm hurt, then why am I feeling hurt? If this isn't actual anger kind of thing. So breaking down those emotions too, even when it's worry. Okay, so I'm worried because I forgot to pay the water bill by one day. Why am I so worried about this? Why is this ruminating in my spirit so much? Well, this goes back to, you're upset because you need stability because you didn't have much money growing up. You remember that time when you was 5 and you didn't have water, and, so just breaking it down and, I guess sort of focusing on that trauma too. Carrie, you are not that 5-year-old girl anymore who didn't have water. You're a grown ass woman who forgot the fucking water bill by one day. You're good. That kind of thing. So just practicing pause is huge. And that is really just as simple as stopping yourself and saying, what am I doing? What am I actually feeling in this moment? So that's kind of helped me. And I'm not perfect with it. I'm just not, but that's what's helped me some.
Yeah, absolutely. And knowing what you're feeling, knowing when you're triggered, and what you can actually do to manage that, working through it, creating safety for
Yeah.
yourself
Yeah. And
as much as possible.
I don't know if it is a Pisces Venus thing, but I have, and it's because I struggle with it so much. In not everything that comes my way is my bullshit, right? So if
Mm,
someone gets angry because they received something wrong that I said, if I examine it and everything and really look at it, and I know I'm a kind person, then we can talk about it and establish what happened. I'm so sorry, I didn't mean it that way. But when I was younger, it was very much, I would take that on. I would feel guilty. Like I was just the scum of the fucking earth kind of thing.
it's so important, especially with that Pisces energy, to not take on stuff that isn't yours, right? Like, it doesn't mean, I think when people hear that, because of the way that we're conditioned, they hear don't care about other people or just focus on yourself, which is something that I am really bothered by. I think in terms of like any kind of spiritual communities, I think it's really popular to kind of stick to the high vibes
Yeah.
and be actually
Mhm.
avoidant, about like real stuff that is happening in the world. And I think that's a
It
problem.
is. It is.
So I think it's like a delicate balance of, right, if somebody is kind of putting their energy on you in some way, or putting on their stuff, putting it on you in some way and expecting you to kind of manage it for them, obviously that's not our problem. That's not something we can do something about. But if we're bothered by the things that we see in the outside world, my first question is, okay, what can I do
Right.
about that? And who can I do it
Yeah.
with, right? Like, we're so conditioned to be very individual in the United States. And, it's like, not my
Yeah.
problem and I got to worry about me. And unfortunately, a lot of us are in a position where we are kind of living day to day and struggling. A lot of people are not in a great position, right? And I think rather than getting lost in like, oh, I'm really struggling right now, for the people that are, it's like okay, other people are struggling too. So, what can we do individually and together? How can I join with people who see what I
Yeah,
see in some way and figure out ways that we can move forward together so it isn't so like all on one person's shoulders?
right. Something I have seen in all my years of doing this is not enough people are aware of what is called spiritual bypassing. You are conditioned and raised however you're raised, right? For me, it was predominantly Christian, Southern Baptist. And so I had that spoon fed to me at a very young age. And then mediumship finds you and psychic ability finds you, or however you want to put that statement, and you grab hold to it. And then you have other teachers that come in and they teach you, high vibration. You have to be happy all the time. And, and you find yourself struggling with it, especially, someone who has mental illness struggles with trying to be positive all the time and pushing all those emotions, those feelings, the pain, the hurt, the trauma, you push it down and you just basically walk around, shitting sunshine and rainbows, instead of dealing with what you've got going on. And eventually that shit has to go somewhere, And so for me, I ended up sick. I ended up, not wanting to be here anymore, and then that's when, I'm very thankful that I did learn about spiritual bypassing. My point being is, and it's no judgment to them because everybody has their own journey through spirituality. But if you don't keep, that's why even when I teach, I talk about. I mean, you probably remember how many times did I talk about keeping your feet on the ground? We are here to have a human experience. That is the love, the pain, the emotions, all of that. There's a quote from a movie. It's my favorite quote in the whole world, and I'm probably going to get it wrong, but it's from the movie Equilibrium, and it's life without pain, without emotions, without something else is like a clock ticking. You're here to experience all of that. So yes, you can have your spirituality and your faith, and no matter what it is, but remember to also be present with yourself and experience what you're here to experience instead of spiritual bypassing it.
I fully agree. And I really appreciated that. And for those who don't know our history, which is probably a lot of people listening to this podcast, Carrie is one of my mentors. And specifically, she has mentored me in psychic mediumship, which was something that was not on my radar, like at all. At all. And it was funny because it was early 2023, and Carrie had shared that she was teaching a beginner's mediumship class. And I had this kind of intuitive hit that I should take that class. And I thought it was really weird that I was like so fixated on it because I was like, that's not like on the agenda right now. And I just really felt this like strong pull to the class. And I even mentioned it to Lori and the other astrologers that I study with, and they were like, you should do it. And then in fact, a bunch of them did it with me too. So it turned out to be a really cool experience that we had together as a group. We're still
Yeah.
having together as a group. So a lot of what I know about mediumship and psychic abilities has come through you. It's really hard, I feel like, to find teachers in this area that are so grounded, and which is why I feel so very lucky to have come into contact with you and with Lori, because it is very human focused, like you were saying.
Let's say, bitch, don't make me cry. Don't make me cry.
It's very human focused. And I think that because of my background, which is evangelical Christianity, we have some of that in common.
Yeah.
And I was taught so much to distance myself from my humanity because it was sin. It was sinful. We
Yeah.
were told that it was essentially something that we should push down. We were
Yeah.
kind of taught to spiritually bypass, like in a way,
Mhm.
right? You got to be good. You got to be good, or you're going to spend eternity burning in hell. I mean, that's quite like the bar to clear.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so it was liberating for me to find people that are in this realm that are not kind of reiterating a different version of the crap that I grew up with.
Yeah. Well, it was an honor to have you as a student. So thank you for allowing me to be a part of it.
It's been great. And honestly, I really had no idea that I was going to be able to do mediumship. Like, that was shocking to me that I could do that. I was like, what the hell? But it was funny because just what you were saying, that quote that you mentioned, we're approaching a year since I took that beginner's class. So we've talked about spiritual awakenings on this podcast before and how it's not a one and done event, right? It is an unfolding, which is
Right.
something that you teach. And so as I've been unfolding, over this past little less than a year, I've been a lot more communicative with my dead people, which is something
Yeah.
that I kind of did before, but this really gave me permission to like invest more energy in it and be open to it in a different way and also know what that could look like. It was just very
Yeah.
new to me. And so the other day I was talking to Kathy and the other astrologers that I study with, and I was saying that my grandparents, my mom's parents, I was very close with my grandmother, and my grandfather unfortunately died when my mom was very young, so I never got to meet him. My grandmother was like another parent to me. She was really heavily involved in my raising. Honestly, I would credit her with me being here right now making this podcast because she was such a creative person. And she really was one of the people that sat down and taught me how to make things. She was a very crafty woman. Also, she just would like Christmas time, she's an elderly woman and she's on the ladder putting Christmas lights on our house and, just like
Uh-oh.
unstoppable.
Get it.
I had this very formidable and creative person in my life from a young age that gave me the confidence and the skills to really like do the stuff that I'm doing now. So the loss was major for me. So I have a connection with her, a stronger connection with her in that. And my grandfather has been a little bit more of a mystery to me in some ways because I just never got to meet him in person. And there's a lot I don't know about him. It's funny because as the past few months have gone by, I've definitely been like talking to them more, and I described them as the Muppets in the balcony, like the two of them. That's how the vibe feels. Is like sometimes they pop in and they'll kind of be giving like commentary.
Right. Oh, that's
And
awesome.
it's so funny.
That's so cool.
So the other day I'm sitting on my couch and I'm like, I had made some food and I burned the shit out of my hand.
Oh gosh.
Boiling water ended up on my hand. So not a good situation. I'm fine. But I was like pissed off because it's just like irritated. And it was like I
Yeah.
had already dealt with enough that day. And I'm like irritated. And then in that moment, I hear my grandfather and he's like, "Pain's how you know you're still alive." And I was like, yeah, I guess. So
Yeah, true, Grandpa, true, but not helpful in this moment. There's still pain.
yeah, he made me laugh. But he had a Gemini moon. So I feel like he was probably a pretty funny guy.
Yeah,
It's just funny to have these experiences where, I think when we're new to psychic mediumship and we think that it looks a certain way and
yeah,
it feels a certain way. And for me, it's actually kind of silly like that a
yeah.
lot of the times. Like it really is the Muppets in the balcony like vibe. It's weirder than I thought it would be.
Well, I mean, if it wasn't though, would it keep your attention?
Probably
You know
not.
what I mean?
Probably not.
It's got to be fascinating and weird and
Hmm.
exciting, or
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I say that, but it's also you have to have a passion for it. You know what I mean? Some people just aren't interested in it, and that's fine too. They may have the ability, but they're just like, yeah, it's not for me. And then other people, which is kind of what happened to me. I got my first taste of it, and then I was doing 2 hour circles every single day for a year and a half, 2 years, every single day, except for 3 weeks. I got the flu and strep throat, and I was out. But other than that, it was every single day.
Wow. That sounds like me when I started astrology because once again, I didn't plan on becoming an astrologer. That was not on my radar. I just like happened to find Lori on TikTok and I was like, this woman, she was, talking more socially and politically than I expected for an astrologer. And a lot of the astrologers that I've encountered are not like that. They're a little bit fluffier than Lori is.
I love a woman with a mouth, don't you?
Oh yeah. Oh my
Knows how
God.
to knows how to articulate and straight to the point. I love it.
Right? That's exactly why I took a class with her and why I took a class with you because I was like I remember the first time I got a reading with you, which was also it was you and Lori were part of my spiritual awakening, quote unquote,
Yeah.
the most recent one, I guess. It was, the two of you just being so yourselves and not apologizing for the fact that the way that you guys do things is different than the way that other people do things. And when I sat down for a reading and then you started chain smoking, I was like, this is the bitch for me. I loved it. And then it's funny because we've had conversation. You were like, oh man, I curse a lot and all this stuff. And I don't know if people are going to like that in my classes. And I'm like, honestly, I don't know that I would have taken your class if you weren't the way that you are. It was like moth to a flame, it was like, this is for me.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you enjoyed it. Oh gosh.
I do. Because honestly, but you know me now. And, can you imagine me I'm not a button up type person. I can do that. I can be that.
Yeah.
I've been that before. It's just not who I am when I am, being fully myself. I am kind of a weirdo. I like to joke around. I like to fuck around,
Yeah.
It's like,
The epitome of fuck around and find out.
exactly.
Mm.
Exactly.
What's funny is we're all a part of the originals, but we all found Lori at the same time.
Right?
To me, it's that predestined or fated connections that you have, which you can call them soul ties, you can call them soulmates, whatever. That's another soapbox thing for me or whatever. But
Yeah.
but we,
It's an important
yeah,
soapbox.
it is. We all ended up intertwined and connected in where we're supposed to be. So that was nice.
I think it's been so important for me because, especially when you're having what you might consider a spiritual awakening where things are shifting, your perspective is changing, I think it's really important to have people that understand this kind of thing because not everybody is like a spiritual girly, right? I was not at all. So, not everybody's going to understand what you're talking about, or they're going to think it's kind of weird, or they're just not going to really know what to say because maybe they've just not had those experiences. So I think it's so important to connect with people on that level. And that is something that, yeah, you're right. It feels almost like destined in a way because I just happened to come into contact with just this amazing group of people, the right teachers at the right time. And I think that that is what, like Lori would consider that what happens when you're in alignment, right? Like when you're kind of doing the things that you're supposed to be, that you're drawn to on a soul
Mhm.
level. And that's what it's been like for me. It's just I've been kind of following my intuition even before I knew what that meant.
Right. I know what I have seen is, because I was in the same boat. A lot of my students have talked about it, and I've had to tell them, you're not fucking crazy, because that is what happens when you sort of start your spiritual awakening. Is you feel like you're fucking crazy. Like, am I losing my mind? Do I need to check myself in somewhere? What the fuck's going on? So when you have someone whose feet is firmly planted on the ground, it can be a lot easier to actually listen and discern, oh, maybe I'm not losing my mind, as opposed to, like here would be an example. The angels are around me because I've had ringing in my ears for 3 days, and there is a message, but I don't know what it is. You need somebody on the other side of that to say, no, Shug, you should probably go to the ER because you may be experiencing a medical issue, as opposed to angels trying to give you some sort of message. I love the scientific approach of evidential mediumship. To me, it's like playing a game of CSI. It's because I need the shit that nobody knows. I need that, or I don't feel like I'm doing my job properly, kind of thing. I have to have the scientific approach to things.
And I think that's a good thing. I think that, like, for people who don't know, how do you define evidential mediumship for people that haven't heard that term?
Evidential mediumship is where there is a special emphasis put on the information that you get from spirit, that it is evidence based. This can be names, dates, birthdays, hobbies, shared memories, but it's not limited to that. In short, it is just basically information that there's no fucking way I would know. Like, if I tell you the difference between a regular medium and an evidential medium is a regular medium that hasn't had the training, hasn't spent the time or put the work in, may tell you, I have your grandmother here. She says she loves you. Oh, she loved to cook so much. Whereas an evidential medium may tell you, oh, I have your grandmother here. She comes through with so much love. And she's talking about how she cooked gołąbki all the time and sprinkled sugar in it to give it a little zing. Or it's just stuff that there's no way I could know, or the evidential medium would know. Now, while I'm talking about this, I would like people to be aware, because part of my mission is also to educate people against scammers. Now, in the boom in social media, especially TikTok, and with more credible evidential mediums coming to TikTok, you have a boom of scammers, that's the only way I know to put it, who are not evidential mediums, who are doing lives and charging for readings, who have never had a day of training or anything like that in their life, who are putting evidential mediumship or evidential medium as their title. So people need to be aware of that. I mean, I've started telling people, stalk these motherfuckers the way you would stalk your ex. I'm not promoting stalking in any way, shape, or form. Do not stalk people. But I'm saying, if you're going to book a reading with them, look up their website, look up their training, email them and ask them, where did you get your training from? Those are okay questions. Those are okay questions to ask if you're going to spend your money with somebody. But I mean, baby, if you want to blow your money up a wild hog's ass, then you go on and do that. But it's important. It really is important.
It is. I think that people don't realize, because spirituality is all sort of lumped together. Like, people ask me psychic questions in my live streams all the
Yeah,
time, and I'm
that's
like,
not what I
that's not
do.
what's going on here. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? They just think it's all the same shit. Yeah. It's
yeah.
like, read the room, honey.
Not the same thing.
But yeah, they think it's all the same shit. And it is totally appropriate to ask people where
Yeah,
they learned what they're
yeah,
doing and how they learned what they're doing, and kind of vet people. And I think that because we're not like a doctor, people are like not thinking about it that way, and they just
yeah.
think it's like, oh, good. But it's really important in anything that you're doing to be discerning, and it's just as much in the spiritual realm. So I'm assuming that becoming a medium, starting that part of your journey, was that kind of, would you consider that a spiritual awakening?
Absolutely. Yeah.
What was that like for you?
I was very blessed that Spirit had already put me where I needed to be. That's all I know how to say it. I was already in the groups and surrounded by people who already knew all about mediumship. For me, it was absolutely exhilarating. I remember like 2 weeks before I had my spiritual awakening, I've always been really fascinated with mediums, and I used to watch John Edward. I used to and as I started developing, I always said I was going to be one of his students one day. I'm still manifesting that shit. I'm just saying. Anyway, because you never stop learning. You never stop learning. But I used to watch all the TV shows and all that. And about 2 weeks before I had my first like mediumistic experience where I like read someone, I was watching Long Island Medium. She was bringing through someone's sister, and for those who don't know, my sister is departed, and so I'm squalling with them, And I remember saying to myself, "Man, I wish I could do that for people." And about 2 weeks later, my brother and sister come to me through the radio, which sounds really weird, but I had a radio that didn't work. This motherfucker turned on at 2:30 in the morning, blaring "Stairway to Heaven" wide open, which was a huge song. Led Zeppelin was huge for me and my brother and my sister, and my brother's also departed. And then after that, I was just kind of like off to the races kind of thing. So it wasn't jarring or anything like that. My biggest thing was I was worried that when I came out to my family, I would be just immediately cut off and everybody would hate me, and I'd be, which I was already the black sheep. So, but when I come out as being nobody gave a fuck. So it was like, I'm like sitting there like waiting. Hey, I'm a medium. I talk to dead people, and everybody's just like, okay, like we're druggies. We're druggies. You're good, boo. I was like, okay, all right. No, literally nobody gave a fuck at all. And nobody's ever even said anything about me. I had one dude say something one time. Lord have mercy. I had one dude say something to me one time about, you need to talk to Jesus. And it was on a Facebook post. And you would just have to know my Capricorn sun, Gemini moon, Cancer rising mother. Because I just responded with, Jesus is my homeboy. But like weeks later, I found out that my mama actively hunted this motherfucker down on Facebook and cussed him out for everything he was worth. She did not tell me at the time, but
Oh
she
my God.
she blessed him out. So yeah, that was hilarious to me. But I don't know. It really wasn't. It really wasn't a shock to me because, Kaycee, I was always weird growing up. I had my first psychic experience when I was 4 or 5 years old. You know, back then you'd leave your kid in the car to run and get a pack of cigarettes, and my mom came out, and the car was off. She had the keys with her, and I just looked at her and I told her that when she cranked up the car, "Don't worry, be happy" was going to be on the radio. And she cranked it up, and "Don't Worry, Be Happy" was playing on the radio. And she just looked at me like, okay, what the fuck is this? So I don't know. I might have been seeing departed people all my life and never knew it and just thought they were regular people. I don't know. But funny enough, Kathy pulled up my Saturn return chart, and I was 29. And to me, I'm not anywhere near the caliber of
Mm.
you and Kathy or any of the other astrologers, but to me, even I could see it. It looked like just a eruption of, "Oh, bitch, you have arrived. This is your." To me, it was like, there it is.
Yeah, your return was in 2013, so that was pretty close to.
I started doing tarot October of 2013.
Okay, wow. So that was like a month before this return. So you were really setting yourself up. Yeah, it was an eighth house return too.
So yeah, and like I said, even me, I was like, "Whoa, fuck, there it is." And she's like, Kathy was like, "Oh my god." It really does fit when I tell people in class, usually you start opening up as a medium or a psychic between the ages of 27 and 30. And I had no clue that that was a Saturn return or whatever time frame until later on. I think it might have been you that told me that. And so it was like, "Oh, that's fascinating as shit right there."
It is very interesting. And it's funny because like you were saying that you had had these experiences before, right? So it's not usually like any kind of return is not usually, completely like out of the blue. I think people like to give themselves things to be scared about. Saturn return is one of those things, right? For you, it's a 28-ish year process of each return. And so the energy of your Saturn return is playing out right now.
Yeah.
And, it's authority in, the woo-woo kind of witchy part of our existence. Looking at the return, which I just pulled up right now, like absolutely looks like you are becoming a fucking medium.
Oh gosh. I
It's really
see.
like, no, 100%. Like it looks like, you're doing some cool shit. And also, like building community
Yeah.
around it too, which is one of the other things I really love about you is that I know a lot of people, and I feel like you have a lot of connections to people, and I think you know how to support people and be there for them in whatever way you can be. And I always felt that about you.
I try my best.
I mean, this shows me that that's part of it too, a part of that growth, part of building what you're building, and now and teaching.
I have all my little fledglings all around me.
You're building an army, is what it is. I feel like a lot of people either one, they think that they don't have any abilities at all, or that maybe they've got all the abilities and they always have. I feel like it tends to be really extreme, right? It's like they're
Yeah,
king of the world, or they're like they ain't shit, right?
right.
What do you say to that in terms of just like person to person and understanding our intuition? Like, what's your perspective on that?
I can tell you what I say to myself. Prove it. And I realize that does sound extremely motherfuckerly, but I'm sure I've told you the story about Mary Fu Manchu, the little 70-year-old ACDC loving bike riding lady from Scotland. When I first started mediumship, we were in this group, and they were all these people that talked about everything they could do. And Mary would push me to offer a reading, and I'm like, "No, there's all these people. Like, this bitch can stand on her head and juggle with her titties. Like, I mean, I can't do none of this stuff." And she would say, "Carrie, have you seen them do it?" And I would say, "Well, no." "Okay, then you don't know that they can do it." And so for me, that was my aha moment. So that's for people who are like, "I can do everything," right?
Mhm.
There's also the other side of it. What my mentor taught me, which her mentor Janet Nohavec taught her, was, why would you have your fingers in all these pies when you could be good and really fucking good at one thing? When you could study it for your entire life and be phenomenal at it, or just be a little good at 5 or 6 different things, or mediocre. So that's always stuck with me. For people who don't think that they have any abilities. I usually start off with telling them, number one, we all have psychic ability. We're born with it. It's called intuition. It is our animal instinct. Everybody has it. Now, not everybody is a medium, but everybody does have the ability to have mediumistic experiences. Does that mean that you will be able to give a full blown reading like I do? No, it does not. It doesn't. But you do have the ability to talk to your loved ones in spirit if you just trust. You can ask them for signs and wait for it. Give them time, or they're around you, you know. So I try to start out with something like that. But one of the biggest things is you're already psychic. Like, you just have to learn to hone it in, and the skills and the focus of it. You have to learn to turn off that left side of the brain kind of thing.
Yeah, I think that because of the way people maybe don't understand what it is and what it looks like, it's very easy to be like, it's just something that is you just have or you don't. And it
Yeah,
doesn't matter if you develop it or not. It's not like exercise where you need to, go to the gym on a regular basis and train.
yeah,
And I think that that is one of the things about anything in this kind of realm is that people discount how much work goes into it. And it's not something like sometimes I think when I'm doing astrology and stuff and people will ask me a question and I'm like, well, I would need to go like look and calculate that. It's not, it's not something
yeah.
that just is going to fall out of my head. And they don't realize that it takes a lot of dedication and study because I think that that disrupts their illusions of what it is that we're doing.
I think we have to remember, and as hard as I mean, it makes my eye twitch just that I'm about to say it, but I think we have to remember to give muggles a little grace in all they know is what they have seen on TV.
Hmm.
All they know is what they've been conditioned to believe. And, you're super special if you're a psychic. You are super special if you're an astrologer. You've got the gift of it. That's why you'll rarely ever hear me refer to being able to do mediumship as a gift because it makes it very sort of boxed in. Like, only select few are chosen for this. And whereas that may be true on some level, as far as being able to give a full blown reading, it's not necessarily true at its core because you have to remember that the society, we'll just call them the society, the man, if you will, has put steps in place for hundreds and thousands of years to keep us in a fucking box, to keep us from expanding our awareness, whatever that may look like to you. Hell, it may be, turning on Pink Floyd, smoking some reefer, and fucking painting a kaleidoscope of colors. Whatever it is, they've kept us in a box because even that, in my opinion, is a spiritual, or it can be, minus the reefer. That was just me talking, but it can be a very spiritual experience. Anything that takes you out of yourself is a form of meditation and a form of connecting with something bigger than you, if that makes any kind of
Oh,
sense.
that makes complete sense. I think socially, we're also really conditioned to want to be special.
Hmm.
And it makes me sad because the reality of the situation is that every single person is special, right? Like when you
Yes.
get right down to it, we have different skills, different abilities, different life experiences. And I think people do it in a couple different ways. Either I'm so special or I'm the worst person alive.
Yeah.
And both of those things are ways that we distance ourselves from other people
Right. Yeah.
because we're putting ourselves in an exceptional position that I am so much worse than everyone else or I'm so much better than everyone else. I am chosen. Either way, you are putting distance between yourself and other human beings.
Yeah.
And I think that that is not a great thing to do.
No, it's not. And I think, or I feel like if we looked at the root of all of it, it would be some kind of trauma. But you even have to be careful saying that because some people wear their trauma as security blankets. I say
Hmm.
that because I was one of those individuals for a long time. I have a Pisces Venus.
You know how to really roll around in it.
Yes, yes. But I do feel like a lot of it goes back to trauma, whether it's being told that we weren't good enough, or being made to feel like we weren't good enough, or made to feel like we were everything. And, to me, I'm very big on, you have to let people fall. You help them up, but you have to let them fall. So you can't spoon feed, let's say, a child, that they are the best at everything, they are wonderful, they are, I mean, yes, you can to an extent. I hope that comes through in what I'm saying. I'm not saying be an asshole to your child, but you have to prepare them for failure, in that, yes, you can tell them that, oh, you're so beautiful and this is wonderful and this is great, but you can't necessarily treat them like the queen of the castle right off the fucking bat. In my point of view, that can even be traumatic for someone when they hit, I don't know, about the age of 16, and their world gets fucking rocked because they didn't make the baseball team. And even that's an experience where you have to be gentle and everything else, as opposed to, well, the rest of the team just sucks. Your coach is just an asshole. He just doesn't like you. No, baby, we need to work on some things, and maybe that's why you didn't make the team. It's a balance.
I think it is harmful in a way to insulate your kid too much, insulate people too much, because we are here to have a human experience. And one of the things that I try to emphasize a lot in astrology and working with clients is not to be so afraid of making mistakes.
Right.
I think that was something that I have a Capricorn moon. So growing up with a Capricorn moon, I had these amazingly high standards for myself, and it was pretty perfectionistic, right? And it wasn't even necessarily something that was taught to me or put on me, but it was probably a product of the fact that I was going through a lot of stuff, and I
Right.
really wanted to get the hell out of Dodge and go to college and make something of my life and be free. So there was that. But when you put somebody on a pedestal, it's not helping them to have them there and to insulate them from mistakes and from failure, because we learn a lot from our mistakes. We learn a lot from our failures.
Absolutely. Yes.
And so, like, from an astrological perspective, this was something that came really sharply into focus for me, because if you look at astrology, there are moments that I look back that were some of the most difficult moments of my life. And I look back and I say, you know what? Honestly, if I had to go back and do that again, I would rather make different decisions, but I don't have that ability.
Right.
And I can see that the mistakes, quote unquote, that I made then led me to a bunch of better things.
Yeah.
So it kind of like throws the concept of mistakes into question for me, because I'm like, well, what's a mistake when you can make a meal out of it?
Right. Yeah, yeah. Well, and it's even like we talk about in mediumship class. Mediumship is like walking outside in the dark to get your clothes off the line, and there's potholes everywhere. You fall, you get up. You fall, you get up. That's how it works. You have to fall in order to learn what you're supposed to learn from the experience. But as a side note, you need to start telling people to Miss Frizzle that shit. Do you know who Miss Frizzle is?
Magic school bus.
Yes, take chances, get messy, make mistakes. And so here's a question for you. How do you fight against, because I see this a lot and I find myself going down the rabbit hole, and then Kathy has to basically slap me through the phone. So how do you fight against all the misinformation and the pop astrology that is out there? Because it is fucking terrifying. It is absolutely terrifying that we've got this Pluto moving into Aquarius transit, and it's going to be in my 12th house. And I keep trying to keep in the back of my mind that Lori said, bitch, it's this degree. It's not going to affect you for a while. But then you have other people out there like, oh my God, it's Armageddon. You're going to have a whole shakeup. Someone's going to die. It's in your 12th house. And I'm serious. Like the last 3 days, I've been like scared to death that my mom's going to die on January 20th and shit. Like,
Oh my God.
so how do you
Okay.
how do you fight against that?
It's complicated. This is something that is it's just continually frustrating to me. There's a few reasons why I get really irritated about it, and I completely understand your level of ethics and your irritation with scammers and frauds being out there, because it makes more work for us, and I don't think people realize that.
Right.
Like, I don't want to have to clean up some dumbass's mess.
Yeah. Now you understand the shit I was talking about, right?
Oh, I completely get it. I completely get it. I hate scammers. I hate that there are people out there representing themselves as astrologers that have read some books. I see people that have these massive followings, and some of them even seem like nice people. They don't seem like they're trying to pull the wool over anyone's eyes, but they are not
Right.
astrologers. They are saying things that are objectively wrong. If you study the astrology, just objectively wrong. It's not a matter of interpretation. It's just, these are not astrologers. So I try to encourage people to be skeptical, especially when they hear stuff that is fear mongering, because especially on social media, fear mongering is what gets
Yeah.
views. It gets people all stirred up, and they're sending the videos to their friends saying, oh my God, we got to do this, and I'm freaked out, and this is why my life sucks. And I often find that people are looking for reasons why bad things are happening to them, or looking for reasons why they are the
Yeah.
worst, or there's something wrong with them based on their astrology, which is like, if you're new here, I don't do that at all. I have no patience
Right.
for it. I think it's self-indulgent, especially as Pluto is about to move into Aquarius. It's not about you,
Right.
you know? So it's all just like it's a big mess. It makes more work for me. I do not mind. I actually really enjoy when people come into readings and say, hey, I heard this thing. And it's like, they know it's ridiculous, but it's still in the
Yeah.
back of their head, and they're like scared about it. And I completely open space for that. I'm not critical of people I understand. It's a very human thing to hear something that applies to you and be freaked out by it because you don't know.
Yeah.
And so that's my job, right? Is like, if I can sit with you in a reading and you tell me, oh, I heard my Saturn is up my asshole, so, I'm going to die, or whatever it
Right.
is. I'm happy to be like, hey, that's actually total trash,
Right.
and you are going to be fine. And actually, here's what it does mean. So I enjoy doing that, but it's also frustrating to me because it's like completely
Mhm.
unnecessary.
Yeah.
So it's never frustration with the people that are getting freaked out. It's always frustration with the people that are spreading bad information and stirring people up for views. But the other part of that is that I just had to come to terms with the fact that I am not in control of what other people are doing. I have had to kind of detach some responsibility from that, because it's like, I don't really want to be the astrology police. And the way that I counter it is by making what I'm making right now. My reaction to that is that it is important for me to put the good information out.
Yeah.
That's what I can do. That's within my control, is to put the good information out, to spend the time doing these interviews, putting people in touch with spiritual people that actually are going to have something to offer them that is constructive and healthy and nourishing, and not, I could get so caught up in, it's very easy to do. It's very easy to do because there's just so much bad information out there. But honestly, it's like, I'm having to, this is very on point actually for this podcast. It's about conserving my energy. I can't stop people from saying bullshit on the internet, sadly.
Right.
All I can do is offer people something that is better, and make my intentions very clear, and provide people with the best information I can, and be a counter to that. Like, that's what is within my control. And that's why I am doing what I'm doing. I had a whole other career, and in this moment, in terms of astrology, part of my purpose and part of the reason that I feel that I'm here is to be a part of kind of creating this new world that we're stepping into, right? We have Pluto at 29 degrees of Capricorn right now. It's about to do the start of its little farewell dance here. It'll be going back into Capricorn briefly in September. So we're not done with it yet, but we are seeing a lot of things now falling apart around us. A lot of these social issues and institutions and people in power that have completely failed us. I see my role as being a part of what we're creating next, what we're building out of the rubble and the chaos of what we're experiencing now.
Right.
So it's just having the courage, the focus, the energy to build something that is hopefully more appealing to people than bullshit that freaks them out and doesn't do anything for them.
Yeah.
And I think that's what it comes down to, is like, if you're listening to somebody and they're freaking you out, it's like, what am I getting from
Right.
this? And if you don't know enough about astrology, I would not interpret anybody saying something really scary to you as the truth. Just because they're saying it doesn't mean it's true.
Right. It's almost like you have to sort of set that, because I experience this too with students who come, or even people who come to me for readings, or when I'm in the shop, they'll come in and they say they have an attachment or someone's stuck, or whatever else. And I have my own belief system about that. which we won't get into because it's, it's my belief system. But there's a lot of sort of unlearning you have to do. But you also have to set that almost like internal reminder in your body that if something brings about fear for you that you're listening to that's supposed to be informative, or watching that's supposed to be informative, you should probably take a different look at things. And that's not to say that there's not going to be crunchy times, as Lori says, but it should not invoke absolute terror or fear in your body.
My hope is that people are coming to realize with everything that is happening in the world, how much people and institutions that have a lot of power use fear to
Yes.
assert authority over us, to keep us, because people that are living in fear are much easier to manipulate and control. And they are not owning their own personal agency in a situation because they're shut down.
Yeah. If you can control the narrative of how a person may get harmed or how they may die, you can control them absolutely, especially if you can control what's going to happen to them in the afterlife.
Absolutely. Yes.
You can absolutely control every part of them. It's kind of one of them, that's a hard road to hoe. It makes me sad for people in general. I mean, when I say people, obviously I mean me too, because fuck, I get on that crazy train too. I ride that bitch all day long. You know, I mean, until I have the community that I have been blessed to have, that somebody can say, "Hey, bitch, no, what are you doing? Get it together." And then we can have the hard conversation of trying to help me unlearn what I have learned up to this point, because we're always learning and growing. Always.
I think the first step for a lot of people is recognizing that fearful training, whether it's from religious conditioning or social
Yeah.
conditioning, and committing yourself to not feeding it,
Yeah.
not building an altar to your fear, not looking for things to put in the fear hole, right? To keep it
Right.
going. Because I think if you're used to being very afraid, it's comfortable
Yeah.
to stay there. And what we're going to see with Pluto moving into Aquarius is that we're going to have to do things differently. We're going to have to step outside of the comfort zone. We're going to have to see what's not working for us. And we're going to have to make different decisions. And we don't have to do it ourselves. We don't have to do it all in isolation. Actually, it's better to do it together with
Yeah.
Pluto and Aquarius.
Yeah.
There's a lot of power in it. You've got Pluto in your 12th house now, so you've already been experiencing change happening. But with Pluto being in your 12th house, it isn't, your mom's going to die, all that kind of stuff. Like, I think people go to the worst case scenario with these things. But for you, I see, especially with the work that you do, I feel like your spirituality is going to be leveling up. You're going to be stepping into more of that spiritual power
Yeah.
that you have, that we all have, right? The other thing is that, people that are concerned about like Pluto going over one of their placements or their ascendant or whatever, especially if you are a little bit older, if you've had a little bit more life experience, sometimes those things are not as devastating. But the other thing about that is that actually in my Britney Spears episode, we were talking about how Pluto went over a bunch of her planets, and it was the moment that her career was blowing up in the best way.
Yeah.
That's when she became super famous. So I think people are only focused on the negative and the fear.
Yeah.
Then that, when you have your eyes on all of the negative and all the fear, you're not open. You're not open for the good things.
It is the same premise as I taught y'all, and I have taught all the mediumship students. If you go into connecting with spirit with fear, fear is what you're going to get. And that is really sort of a life quote, too, that you can apply to. If you go into anything with fear, you're going to get scared to fucking death because fear is already present. You don't have any other room to experience anything else other than that fear. But it's fascinating to me because I was sitting there today, I took my mom to the doctor, and I was sitting there today. We're not real like huggish or touchy feely, and that's on childhood trauma. But anyway, I just kind of grabbed her arm and, just kind of loved on her arm for a minute. And I sat there and I thought, I wonder how many Pluto transits that she has experienced and lived through. And just thinking about it, like, okay, if we look at our older generation or people older than me and just look, it hit me like a ton of bricks, me wondering how many Pluto transits she had lived through. And not even necessarily just Pluto transits, but just transits that pop astrologers teach, is supposed to take you out and supposed to be hell and all that. And I'm sitting there next to a woman who will be tomorrow, is a recovering intravenous drug addict and everything, and she's still fucking kicking it after all the loss that she has experienced and everything. And it's like, okay, all right, well, maybe we can do this.
Yeah, here's the real secret about astrology is that astrology is just a reflection of life.
Right.
I
Yeah.
think that a lot of times people view astrology and the planets almost like Greek gods, which it doesn't help because there is a lot of naming crossover. But they look at it like these petty entities that are coming to fuck with them. And it's really just a reflection of life. So when you're saying you're afraid of XYZ transit, you're
Yeah.
just sitting in fear of the future.
Yeah.
And you're feeding into the most negative vision of it that is possible. And I cannot tell you, most of the times that people assume that something is negative, they don't know what they're talking about. And I think that to find liberation in that you don't know what you're talking about, don't assume the worst case scenario. So, and I think training is really important for that. Like just even basic training. It will really help people who are interested in astrology and want to consume content about it be a bit more discerning about who they're trusting to give them information. But it should never be fear based. So you've been teaching.
I have.
What do you have coming up next for people that might be interested in studying with you?
In February, I kick off Intermediate Foundations of Mediumship. It's a 6-week course. In the intermediate, we start like hardcore working. It's more informative. You're still learning the mechanics of mediumship and stuff like that, but I make you work. And then also in February, I'm starting back up Exploring Tarot's The Majors. And that's a 9-week course where I walk you through the major arcana. I'm country. I pronounce it how I pronounce it, baby. That's how that works. And then it's ongoing, but I have Exploring Tarot, The Minors, and it's a 16-week course, which we're very far into it now, but I have what's called Select a Suit. So if you want to know more about the Suit of Cups, or if you want to know more about the Suit of Swords, those are the two that we have coming up. Yeah, and then at some point I'll start Beginners Foundations of Mediumship.
If people haven't studied with you before, do you prefer that they take beginners before they take intermediate with you?
I do, because I have it on my website where you have to pass a test with at least a 90. But because I have studied for as long as I have studied, and I asked a shit ton of questions on my journey, the mechanics of mediumship is very, very important. The science behind how it works is important. And that's what is laid out in beginners. But if you can pass the test with at least a 90 or higher, then I'll let you take intermediate. But I'm not just going to take your money for you to sit in intermediate and, not know what the fuck we're doing. I'm not that type of teacher.
And I've taken beginners with you. I took intermediate with you, and I also took the Major Arcana Tarot class as well. And I've loved all of your classes. I will absolutely be taking more classes with you in the future. If people are looking for grounded spiritual instruction, even if you don't necessarily plan on doing mediumship, I took the class because I wanted to have a better understanding of my intuition. And as it turned out, I can do the mediumship as well, and I actually quite enjoy it. So if that is something that if you're looking to develop your intuition or just have a better understanding for, if you want to get readings, if you want to be able to suss out who is actually a real deal medium and who is full of it, it can be really helpful for that as well. So,
well, thank you. And that's something too, I guess I excluded. But yes, in the beginners portion of the foundations, you learn psychic work, because without the psychic part of it, you can't be a medium because you use your psychic faculties. So yeah, we work with psychic work and intuition and all that good stuff. We just went over, it was amazing. They got to do aura readings for the first time, and that was really, really cool. That was awesome.
I'm excited for you to have more classes and, do more live streams and stuff like that, because like I feel like you're just so naturally charming and warm, and I think that the more people get eyes on you, the more people that will just love you and want to study with you. So I'm very glad that I have had the opportunity to do that. And so I would encourage people that are interested to connect with you.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
After we recorded, Miss Carrie wanted me to let you know that she's going to be starting Beginner's Mediumship Foundations back up on February 6th. So if you're interested in working with her or studying under her, the information is linked in the show notes. This is going to be the last episode of Petty Astrology Podcast while Pluto is in Capricorn until September. Pluto will move back into Capricorn for its grand finale September 2nd, and it'll stay there until November 19th. So we're in for a really interesting year as we finish up this last chapter of Pluto in Capricorn. Pluto moves into Aquarius this Saturday, January 20th at 4:50 p.m. Pacific time. I already talked at the beginning about how I think you could best use this Pluto and Aquarius energy, but just be aware that over the next few days there may be this sense of heaviness or even isolation that you feel, and the antidote to that is really to take care of yourself, connect with other people, rest when you need to. About 11 hours before Pluto moves into Aquarius, we also have the Sun moving into Aquarius, so there will be a big energy shift this weekend. And no, that doesn't mean bad, it's just going to be different. But we still have a lot of that Capricorn energy going on with Mercury and Mars in Capricorn, and then we have Venus moving into Capricorn as well, and that happens on January 23rd. Capricorn is very slow, steady, and deliberate energy. It's kind of why we all feel like hibernating right now, at least those of us in the Northern Hemisphere. And the astrology leading up to this has been preparing us, right? We've all been getting our visions in order, and then hopefully we've had a chance to be very specific about the steps that we want to take to make those visions into a reality. There is a lot happening in the world, and I never want to encourage people to turn away from that, but we're going to have to be very deliberate with how we use our energy because it is limited, right? We are human beings with human needs, and we can't just power through everything and expect it to go well. But there's going to be a lot of things vying for your attention, a lot of things happening that maybe you are connected to and maybe you are not. And I think a very powerful practice for this Capricorn energy that we have going on now is to be very intentional about what you put your attention on. Like I've been saying, human beings are very powerful, and people spend millions upon millions of dollars trying to figure out how to get our attention so we can buy stuff. Just you having your eyes on something means something. That is power. So practice tuning out the noise. Focus on the things that are actually within your control, ways that you can actually get involved, ways that you can get yourself in a better position to be able to face the changes that we've all got ahead of us. Just because something or someone wants your attention does not mean you have to actually give it to them. But it does mean you need to make some choices. And you need to be thoughtful and considerate. We also have the Leo full moon coming up on January 25th. So in the days leading up to that, you might be feeling emotional in some way, or there may be some things that you're discovering are standing in your way. So leading up to that full moon, you want to release that stuff, that baggage that is holding you back from being more creative, more playful, more expressive, more energized in general. So if there are beliefs that you've been holding on to or ideas that have been holding you back, this will be a great time to let that shit go. This is a big year with a lot going on, and so it's really important that we take account of the stuff that's just not helping us anymore because we have a lot of work to do. And this energy may give you a better idea of how you as an individual can play a role in this collective transformation that we're going through. So listen to yourself, listen to your intuition, and find those people that you can join with to make these changes as we go forward. If you're looking for grounded spiritual community, my Patreon is a great place for that. You can sign up to support the podcast and meet some really cool people. I also have a new moon manifesting circle for people who want to meet on a monthly basis and talk about the energy of the new moon and how you can personally use it to manifest the changes that you want to see in your life. Or you can even become a producer of this podcast if you want to. You can find the link to all of that in the show notes. This episode was produced by Lori Rivers and Elena Tunder and brought to you by my sponsors over on Patreon.